Hi, everybody. Welcome to Learning Leaders Lounge. I'm here with Elizabeth Bagley. She's with Project Drawdown. And first, I'd like to start by asking a question about hope. That's how I like to start all of these. So, what's one moment recently that gave you a climate hope?
Ooh, thanks, Chuck. I think that's a good thing to hold on to, especially when especially with climate change being a pretty overwhelming topic for lots of folks. I was invited into the ninth grade health classes here in Sitka, Alaska, where I live. And the classes were talking about the impacts of climate change on human health. And it was just so inspiring and so hope-filled to chat with those freshmen. And their teacher had warned me they haven't thought a whole lot about climate change before, and they were hungry for it. They were really interested and really curious and just really leaning in and wanting to know more. So that was a great moment of hope, connecting with some high schoolers about connections between climate change and human health and what they can do.
Oh, awesome. That sounds like a really great moment. Um, so how did you arrive at sustainability in education?
Well, we have to go way back in time. Let's get in our time machine, Chuck. And um, I, gosh, I mean, it goes all the way back to growing up on a farm in Wisconsin, right? It goes back to kind
Mhm.
of those values that my parents instilled in me. And then fast forward to being an undergraduate in the biological sciences, realizing I didn't want to be a medical doctor, but I still wanted to help the world, and was really interested in ecology and how the environment worked. Fast forward to when I met you, which was actually in a very unlikely place, that after I finished my PhD and did a postdoc, I thought, why don't I try working in industry, and worked at Leapfrog for a few years as the science learning designer, where I got to design books with you and games and DVDs and really focusing on the science content. And the reason I left Leapfrog, which I think is which I tell the story sometimes, is actually that I got to a point where the ways in which the games or books, the ways that we were designing things were had to be really simplistic, right? Kind of reductionist of like, what are the baby animal names? And I don't know that we ever quite did this, but like a baby porcupine, what's it called, right? It's a porcupine, by the way, and that's adorable. But I really wanted to move, and this goes into kind of your thinking and your evolution, Chuck, in terms of like what kinds of knowledge and skills do people need to solve big problems in the world? And I was like, you know what? Knowing that a baby porcupine is called a porcupette is probably not going to help us solve some of the problems that we're facing, especially related to climate. So
Mhm.
I started working at the California Academy of Sciences, which is a big museum in Golden Gate Park. And at that time, we were really focused on connecting people with actions they can take, specifically in the food system related to fresh water and energy. And that to me was really exciting. Then I decided, you know what, that's even too big, that's too broad. I just want to focus on climate. And that's what brought me to Project Drawdown.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. That I remember working on some of those projects with you. There was a engineering a win, and then there also which was a STEM project, which was a lot of fun. And then our Pixar's uh, the Good Dinosaur, which was going to
Yeah.
have some uh, some science based things, but then that got canceled. But um,
We
uh,
still got some trips to
we
Pixar.
still got some trips to make. Sorry, yes, exactly, yeah,
That was what those were all about,
yeah,
Chuck.
exactly, exactly, yeah, yeah. We one of the things that I'm starting to focus on in my learning is e- exactly what you were talking about, like how to kind of expand beyond, you know, a baby porcupine is a porcupine. Um, sort of thing, and kind of like learn what else we can do. And that's a big part of what these talks are. So um, if what what do you think curriculum could look like if it was designed with sustainability at the center?
Ooh, I love that because I think there are all sorts of ways we can do that. I mean, I think, I taught 8th through 12th grade science before I went to graduate school. So I have a couple of years of teaching under my belt that is now quite dated. But what I thought a lot about was that in the real world, kind of outside of the school schedule, right? We don't solve problems in, you know, English language arts, in social studies, in science. And like there is no distinction when we're looking at the kinds of problems that we solve every day in our lives and in our jobs. And so one of the things that gets me really excited is, this is a bit more of a buzzy phrase, but problem-based learning that really is addressing the types of challenges that we're seeing today. There have been some colleges that have moved towards like, what are the grand challenges that our students can think about? There are, high school teachers and teachers at all levels who are thinking more about problem-based learning to really give people an opportunity to think much more holistically and systemically, because ultimately, when we think about the different levers we pull to make change, they're not in these nice little subject specific boxes, right? And I think that was always a pull for me in the corporate world where, and I love marketers, don't get me wrong, they do incredible things. They're so important, and they're trying to sell a product that has to have something on the box, right? If it's a retail product, right? In a store, and it has to be really narrowly defined. And that's not how we solve problems in the world. So I'm not being very succinct, Chuck, but I think at the end
No,
of
that's
the
perfect.
day, it's like, how do we get these? Oh, yeah, well, in graduate school, we actually had a phrase for it. We called it, not to get too nerdy on you, but the epistemic frame. So what are the lenses through which you're seeing the world? And that epistemic frame is composed of skills, knowledge, values, identity. So those are like the four sides of your frame, and then epistemology, your way of seeing the world. And so in graduate school, I designed video games for learning where young people took on a role, a professional role. So in my case, they were role playing as urban planners to solve the kinds of problems that people solve in the real world wearing an urban planner hat.
Oh, awesome. That sounds like a awesome. That sounds like a great project. It sounds like fun, actually, to
That
do.
was it was so great. And I think for me, um, also recognizing, and especially when I think about climate change, that every job can be a climate job, that we can focus. It doesn't have to you don't have to be a climate scientist. You don't have to be, you don't even have to like science. You could be a lawyer, but you could still be thinking about how you can think about solutions to climate change through your lenses, with your skills, with your knowledge, right? With
Mhm.
your legal lens, for example.
Mm, that's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. So what are some challenges? I mean, I know there's plenty of challenges with solving climate change, but what are some roadblocks like politics, standards, like getting community buy-in? Where is this work hard, and what helps you stick with it? That yeah.
Yeah, well, I think in schools, Chuck, one of the barriers is actually educators feeling confident enough to teach about climate change. When the pandemic hit, uh, we at Project Drawdown, so I started at Project Drawdown the week that everything shut down in March of 2020, which was a bonkers time to start a new job. Anyway, what we started hearing really quickly from faculty members and educators all across the world, they were like, oh my gosh, we know how to teach about the problem of climate change, right? That is like pretty clear cut physics, but we don't know how to teach about the solutions. And we have students who are breaking down in class, who are really emotional, who are really overwhelmed. And we know like it's our obligation to teach about the solutions. So we actually designed Climate Solutions 101, which is a 5 um, unit video series all about the science behind climate solutions so that people can use the same rigor that we apply to the problem with a solution, right? Because there are a lot of shiny objects out there where people think, oh my gosh, that is the one thing we need, and then climate change will be solved. And that just isn't true, right? We know we need all sorts of solutions. And the great news is that we have those solutions in hand today. We don't have to wait for 10 years, right? But we need people to know about them and we need people to do them. And that's where I get excited about education, Chuck, right? Like, how can we inspire and empower people to step into roles so that those climate solutions can be accelerated in every community across the world, right? We need more electricians who can help with installing heat pumps. We need more solar installers. We also need more legal experts to support different environmental law. And so, you know, we need everybody. And the phrase that we often use is that every job is a climate job.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So me and my wife bought a house like 2 years ago. First time, right around 50, we bought a house in California, which was a leap in its own.
Congratulations. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's tricky.
But one of the first things we did was like a couple weeks in, is I got solar installed, but we also got a heat pump. The house was built in 1949, so we got a heat pump, solar. We got an electric vehicle, and we installed energy efficient insulation for the house to upgrade it all. And those were the first things we did. And then I was really excited at the end of year one to find out that everything was tax deductible. So not only did we do it for the environment, which is why we did it, but we also, got, the tax deductions, which was not what was driving me, but it was nice that it happened that way.
Well, way to go, Chuck. Yeah, congrats to you two for doing that. And I think what I like to remember is that in order to do that, right, you needed that there were a lot of people who were supporting that process in terms of having people come in and install those things. All the marketers for the solar company, right? The salespeople, on and on and on, right? There's a whole system of people who are supporting all these solutions. And I just get really excited about inspiring people to step into those places.
Yes. Well, I was inspired when I worked with you on many, many levels, and that environment was one of them.
Oh, thanks, Chuck. Right back at you for sure.
Yeah. So I guess the last thing is, if every classroom were to make one shift tomorrow, what would you want it to be?
That would be a pretty powerful magic wand.
Yeah.
Wow. You know, at a big kind of meta level, one of the things that I get really excited about is making sure that every kid is seen for who they really are. And that maybe is, I don't mean for that to be a cop-out answer, but I think when teachers have 25, 30 or more kids in a classroom, it can be really hard to really see who the individual is and really find ways to nurture their growth. And I sure wish every kid had that all the time with the grown-ups in their lives. That's kind of big picture thing. If we think more about climate, I would want, everyone, regardless of age, to recognize that it's okay to feel strong emotions about climate change and to seek out help along the way and to seek out solutions and to find people nearby who are, like-minded and want to put solutions into place. Here in Sitka, we're an island in Southeast Alaska. we have a number of different groups who are doing all sorts of things, and change doesn't have to happen from the government, right? It comes from all
Mhm.
different angles, and we need that. And so we have a climate action task force it's actually now it's called the Sustainability Commission. That's part of our elected officials, our assembly. We also have other nonprofits like the Sitka Conservation Society and the Sitka Sound Science Center, who are all doing different things. And Spruce Root, they're doing economic development around job creation of more electricians, for example.
Oh,
We need everybody, right, to be implementing climate solutions as quickly, safely, and equitably as we can.
well, that's awesome. Yeah, like yeah, if we, all the electricians and everybody who came in who worked on our stuff, they luckily at the time they were talking about how busy they were with installing solar here, which was fantastic. That was happening at that time. There was so much of that. Well, thank you so much, Elizabeth, for joining me today. How can people learn more about Project Drawdown?
Well, thanks for asking and thanks for having me, Chuck. Drawdown.org is the best place to check out. And I'd love for people to sign up for our newsletter. We send, what I think is really interesting content a couple times a month. We have webinars, we have all sorts of resources, and all of that is on our website at drawdown.org.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Chuck.